What's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is another Chance Encounter.
Hey, what's up? I'm Dan Fredenberg. I'm a commercial real estate guy. I'm from the internet. We're seeing more properties like this being built in front of a house that's going to be torn down soon.
I understand that there are power lines that are getting kind of close.
What's up again? This is Dan Fredenberg, and that there is a commercial real estate building.
I'm joined today with Andy McQuade. How you doing today, Andy?
I am doing great. Thanks.
Awesome.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I got some great news for you, Andy. Today, my very favorite audience member is joining us today. And why is my favorite audience member here? It's because this is a chance encounter where I interview commercial real estate syndicators. That means buyers, sellers, investors, all that kind of stuff. But why would I do such a silly thing? Well, if you know the law and you want access to private, off-market, also known as 506B deals, you'll find out from your securities attorneys that you need to have documentation of your prior substantive relationship before you can start sharing deals. So to make sure that I know my guests' appetite for risk, core competencies that they're looking to contribute and all that kind of stuff, I have them on here. But before we get too deep into Andy's business, Andy, do you want to say a thing or two about yourself?
Sure. Let's see. Married, kid, dog, live in the country outside of Rochester, New York, near the South Shore of Lake Ontario. I've been doing stuff with commercial real estate and real estate in general for 25 years, mostly on the supply side. So I come from selling products into new construction and remodeling and all that stuff for about 19 or 20 years of that. And then the rest of it, I've been a consultant. So that's what I do.
Excellent, excellent. And so that brings us to the first segment here, which is the distinct motivations. Before I do that, though, I always have to ask my guests, but wait, check your eight. Andy, I don't know if you have the uncanny ability to see through the lens of the camera and into the user's device. And then down here, around your 8 o'clock, there might be this big, ugly subscribe button that they really should do something. Okay, no, it's just a stupid joke, and I do it in every episode. But the 5 distinct motivations. The fact is, I've met a whole whack of different commercial real estate investors, syndicators, and all that kind of stuff. And we all have our own unique whys. But I found that after I really got down to brass tacks, there's really just 5. They fit pretty neatly into these 5 different categories. And I go through in every episode because that's got to be on every investor's mind. What's keeping you from leaving? Why are you going to stick around? And that's why I go through these. The first one on the list is preservation of purchasing power. What's that all about? Me personally, I have a background in tech, and this isn't really what I'm up to, but there are people out there who the way they make ends meet is through the proceeds of ownership. So that means they got a portfolio of assets, and then because there's profits for owning them, that's why they are able to get by. But the only reason somebody like that is going to make another acquisition is either if inflation is eating away at the purchasing power of that cash flow, or if they can buy at a steep discount, like when there's an asset crash or something like that. Again, that's not what I'm up to. What I'm up to, because my tech background is trading time directly for wealth. The problem with being in tech is, sure, you got your high salary, high wage earning, but that means that you're paying more in tax than anybody else. And so me coming from the CRM industry, I was watching my boss starting in 2014. He was flipping 10 houses a month, or at least he was doing 10 house transactions every single month. And I was going like, how do I pivot to where I'm getting rewarded in the form of deployed capital, aka equity, instead of giving it to the tax man? So that's what I'm up to with all of this. But a lot of people, especially youngsters, when they get into this industry, they want to take control of their schedule. Maybe that means they want to work fewer months per year or fewer weeks per month or something like that. But it might mean that they actually want to retire. They want to scale back. And that's why they're getting involved in this industry. But that's not everybody. Some people think that's everybody, but it's not. Some people are just plain ambitious. They're after that generational wealth. They want to buy their entire hometown. They want to make sure that their great grandchildren never have to hold a day job. And the nice thing about having somebody like that on your team is, you know, they're going to keep hustling into their 90s. which is also similar to this last group, but their motivations fundamentally different, which is they've found a sector of society, or maybe it's the environment, maybe it's animals, who knows what it is, but they figured out that if you're going to make a really big impact on society, you're going to need a financial backing that's quite substantial in order to pull that off. And so that's why some people are making these acquisitions, is because they want to help others out. So Andy, of those 5 different motivations, what combination of those jumped out at you, do you think really describe you best?
Well, I definitely like the helping part. Maybe it's just the ADHD and the fact I like to be bossy and tell people, based on my experience, what they should be doing. But that's also why I became a consultant, right? So I like helping people. I do, but that's not my primary motivator. My primary motivator is so that my 10-year-old doesn't end up with the scarcity mindset and all the craziness that my parents left me with. My parents were Depression era babies. I was an oops. I came along when they were both in their mid 40s. So my siblings are 20 years older than me. And my parents literally lived through the Depression. So I was raised with all the wrong ideas about money and got the high paying job and lived at my means and made all these crazy, stupid mistakes in my 20s and 30s. I was very good at what I did, but it was not the right path necessarily in hindsight. So since launching my own business, I've become much more aware of all of the insanity that I was just inundated with. It was part of culture. It was how I was raised. And real estate investing and hanging out with the right people definitely shifted my mindset into a different area. And I've almost got my wife there. She's close, but she's not quite there yet.
You're right, exactly. We should get together and compare notes with the spouses. She's getting there. I got Rich Dad Poor Dad in Chinese for her to blast through. So
there you go.
Right.
Awesome.
Excellent. But the fact is, when it comes to real estate, sure, you see all these big numbers floating around. Lots of people are really excited about getting their little sliver of the pie there. But the fact is, there are risks involved, and we really need to make sure that everybody understands these. I personally didn't like the securities attorney questionnaire version of it because I didn't think it was very useful, but I switched it for this one. It's a fill in the blanks question. So Andy, there are many popular investment asset classes, but I think blank is too risky. What's too risky for you, Andy?
So I won't do, even though I live in New York, I won't do residential real estate in New York because the regulations and the laws that are coming down the pipe are just offensive and a huge red flag. It's only a matter of time before the next shoe drops in the next budget or the budget after that. And operating costs are going to go through the roof. Pricing risk in the front side is going to be huge. And you think rent is expensive in New York now, just wait until they get these most recent sets of laws that are on the discussion table passed. It's going to make California look like, I don't know, Texas. It's going to be bad.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you say that because like the popular media way of framing it is they say, landlord friendly versus tenant friendly. And it's just plain, it's coloring the argument before you even get started. And I don't like that. The fact is, why would you buy anything if the government's going to say you aren't allowed to act like you own it? Why would you buy anything you don't actually own? Because that's really how it goes down. But there's lots of things that are risky out there. And that brings me to my segue with eating up the
That's awesome. That was great.
It just kills me, right? And it's the segue to get into the Dan Does Deals Commercial Core Competency Cube. You can get your own copy for free at dandoesdeals.com. I don't even ask for your email address, which is the dumbest thing you could possibly do as a marketer. You should always get some sort of contact information in return for your freebie. But I don't do that because I want you to print this out. I want you to practice the 6 different roles because I think that your future, and I'm not talking to you, Andy, I'm talking to you in the audience, your future in commercial real estate depends on your ability to effectively communicate on the subject. And that is why I built this die. It's so that you know where people stand and you know how my guest, in this case, Andy, fits into the big scheme of things. And I go through all 6 sides in every episode. It only takes 2 minutes. But again, it's to make sure you know how this stuff can be explained quite simply. So first, let's talk about repositioners. A repositioner is a person who looks at a bunch of different properties and does a bunch of different paperwork. What are they doing with that paperwork, you may ask? Probably not. But anyway, the paperwork, they have a fancy word for what they're doing. It's called underwriting. It's doing the math. They're figuring out arithmetically, is this business actually even making the amount of money that the broker slash seller claims it is? Because probably not. But the repositioner, what are they doing really? They're finding upside. They're finding out how can they make this property make more money than it is right now. And one of the things that's a little bit counterintuitive about the repositioner's job is, why are they talking to financiers all the time? Why are they talking to different lenders and all that kind of stuff? So financiers are people who only deal with paper and money. So they're not on the GP team. So they're not actually making the decisions on how to run the place. They're only dealing with the paper and money. But the reason why repositioners have to have great financier investor relations is because if you can secure a cheaper loan, that goes straight to the profitability of the building. So that's why they're always talking to financiers and investors. But often enough, the repositioner, the more obvious place they're going to try and reduce costs are in the operations. They're going to stop those Benjamins from going down those toilets. But of course, there's a lot more to operations than just unclogging toilets and collecting rent and mowing lawns, shoveling snow up here where you get snow. One of the things that I bring to the table because of my CRM and tech experience is automating different tasks, different, things like inventory for maintenance and whatnot. But the other one that comes out, even if you're dealing with bigger buildings like myself in the 100 and up unit buildings, if you are outsourcing your property management, you might have a problem with vacancy rates. And the only cure is marketing chops. So that's the other thing that I bring to the GP team, is more innovative marketing techniques if we have too many empty units. But pretty often there's not enough room to get real profit for the repositioner in just increasing the efficiency of the operations. So they'll get a contractor team to do a value add and do those renovations. The idea being that the future resident will be happy to pay more in rent than the previous one because it's a nicer place. But of course, you can spend endless amounts of money on contracting, and it's not necessarily going to give you a return on investment. So if you're like me, see, I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm from the internet. So that means I need locals. I need boots on the ground, somebody who can be there in an hour or two, because you bet it will not be me. I'd still be stuck at an airport in an hour or two. So that's not going to be me. So I need those boots on the ground, those locals, to keep an eye on the contractors, make sure they're not cutting corners, they're not using substandard parts and materials, things like that. And then also making sure that the operators, they're not sloughing their photos and reports and whatnot. But when the repositioner has assembled this team, they turn around to the financiers and they say, hey, I got this great building. It's tens of millions of dollars. You don't happen to have, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars you want to lend us to take it over, do you? Well, there's one question I haven't answered yet. And even if you're in a guru mentorship program, they might have glossed over this, and it's a little bit of a pet peeve. The financier is going to ask, who is your sponsor? Who's the KP? Who's the person who already owns a similar asset? What's that all about? Let's pretend for a second, hypothetically, you're a physician or an engineer, something like that, and you think, hey, with my pool of friends, maybe if we pool our resources, we could take over one of these big apartment complexes or other form of commercial property. Well, the problem you're going to run into is when you go to the bank and you ask for a commercial loan, somebody in the fold has to already own a similar asset, or else the answer is going to be no. On top of that, among the ownership team, you need a balance sheet of at least the amount of the loan. You also need the down payment, some certain amounts of liquidities, but you've got all that. You've got yourself a commercial real estate deal. So Andy, you already mentioned your consultation part of your business, but with those 6 different sides, how would you describe where you fit in?
So I am definitely an operations guy. I actually made my chops working with big commercial multifamily operators, anywhere from, I don't know, 600 doors locally to 34,000 doors across 17 states. I was C-level office all the time, working with them, kind of trying to find ways for them to buy stuff from me that made sense without costing them more money. So I was really big on the efficiency thing. And I used to ask a lot of questions. I used to be like, hey, how does this work? Why are you doing this? Well, what's your decision here? How can I give you something that you'll buy from me that I can source for you that will help you run your operation better or help you make more money. And if there was a product out there that didn't work for them, because I was at the Home Depot, right? I was like number 8 in the company for 3 years. I had the largest multifamily portfolio in the United States. So I was the multifamily guy. That's what I did. And I would just ask the questions, learn about what their problems were, and find ways to fix it. And I would steal ideas from them that they had already done, and I would give it to my other customers and be like, hey, did you know that these guys were doing this? And this really worked well for them. And so that's kind of where my consulting thing came in now is I don't buy or sell products. I help them find stuff that answers their problems. And I have a lot of this ADHD hyper-focused technical side crap that just goes with how my brain works. And my ability to hyper-focus and absorb that information helped me give them solutions and walk them through why this worked or why this didn't work. And that's what I do now is I just go in and I'm like, hey, listen, let's fix these operations. And it's dumb stuff that, they have a fully fleshed out Yardi system and their guys are walking across the 700 door campus every time they need to pick up another maintenance ticket and turn something in instead of just grabbing an iPad and punching through the work list that's automatically fed to them. Like dumb stuff like that, or spending too much time on the road in a truck going back and forth to Home Depot and Lowe's as opposed to having inventory on site to handle that stuff.
Mhm.
So, and it's little stuff, but it adds up. Like 700 doors, you can easily find 130, 140 grand a year just in stuff laying on the ground, not even having to do any heavy lifting. You get into the heavy lifting and it can be a lot bigger. And there's a lot of race to the bottom crap that goes into multifamily real estate where they're just trying to put a band-aid on it and fix it for today. And who cares if it's going to cost us 3 times as much in the next 5 years to maintain whatever we just put in there. They make those mistakes and the next guy pays for it. And you see it in new construction. New construction is the hugest race to the bottom. These companies will build these apartment complexes brand new for these people. And the quality is so low that it raises their operating costs way before they should. Like you shouldn't, if you build a new property, you shouldn't see a spike in your maintenance costs before like year 4 or 5. And a
Mhm.
lot of these are being done and you'll see it in like year 2, year 3. And it's dumb stuff that could have been avoided by spending an extra $20. Like it's mind boggling how bad it actually is.
I love it. I love it. So my next question then it's the buy box. And before we get to Andy's buy box, let me explain that a little bit. When investors and syndicators are talking to each other, saying what you're looking for, what's your ideal property, we're really asking about 3 main things. The first one's geography. Which states, which county, possibly even which neighborhood. Okay, you're going to need to know where it is before you're going to call it ideal. So that's the first one. The second one is going to be the size. Most of my guests focus on multifamily, so unit count is the way that we pick size on that. And the reason why it's so important is because you're going to have a completely different looking team taking over these 5 and 15 unit apartment complexes compared to the 350 and up and so on like that. So that size definitely matters. In industrial, they go off of square footage rather than unit count or something like that. So there's a few different ways of doing it, but that size is still going to matter. But the third one is called class. And I've got a little bit of a pet peeve. I don't like it when people use the same word with more than one possible meaning. So I split class into condition and area. When I'm talking about condition, it's how old is the building? How beat up is the building? And then as far as the included amenities and luxuries, is it really no frills or is it a really fancy kind of place? That's the class. Now, when it comes to that's the condition. When it comes to the area, on the other hand, you're talking about things like what's the crime rate like where this property is located? How about the school districts where the property is located? And then both of these, this condition and this area, they really come down to desirability, which has to do with how many people are going by that area in any given day. So is there a ton of foot and car traffic or is it kind of dead? But both the area and the condition are ranked the same way as in grade school, where you got A plus at the top and then A and then A minus and then B plus and so on. So Andy, I'm not sure if you're actively looking for properties or if you're more on the consultation side, but go ahead and fill in the blanks as far as buy box or what you can mention about that.
Sure. So I've got a bunch of money in self-storage in Alabama and Mississippi. So that's kind of, I do first position, lean money lending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hard money. So that's where I'm at on my investing. But for what I'm looking to do in the next few years, I like the Sun Belt. I'm looking to relocate out of New York into probably Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So my plan is to start down in like the Knoxville, Maryville area and just kind of expand from there. And whether it's, if the deal makes sense and the numbers work, that's kind of my buy box, right? I don't want to get involved in anything in any of the crazy overregulated states, but I'm not 100% sold on blue versus red, landlord friendly versus, like, I don't care if there's money there and the numbers work and my risk is tolerable, then I'm in, right? So for me, it's a little bit of an easier conversation because I've been helping run a local RIA for the last like 4 or 5 years, and I've been super involved with them since like 2008. And I've already been to RIA meetings and investor group meetings down in Tennessee. I've already toured a bunch of places, so I'm already like looking and shopping actively for places to put capital and all that fun stuff. So my buy box is really anything I can make money on with tolerable risk. Right now, I'm thinking that we're going to see a lot of hemorrhaging of Airbnbs. I think we're going to see a lot of hemorrhaging well, hemorrhaging. People are going to stop being Airbnbs and they're going to go to rentals, or they're going to flip them. Like, I see that as being a realistic thing as people's money tightens and disposable income goes down. It's a natural thing. Just like multifamily is a safe bet because people need places to live. Housing is ridiculous. The market is still super tight. And it just makes sense that it's going to continue to grow and it's going to continue to compound and expand in the states where migration is happening. Like, if there's no job growth and there's no opportunity, then obviously I don't want to have any type of housing there because I don't want to have vacancy. Vacancy is bad.
Right,
So,
right, right. Yeah, it's so competitive, and I love that, especially because it's clear that all sorts of municipalities have Airbnbs in their crosshairs, whereas they do not have them for apartment buildings. That's just, ridiculous. But it's a divide and conquer play, right? But as far as the next one, my favorite thing, I don't know about you, Andy, my favorite thing about commercial real estate is that because it's so multifaceted, you got these different roles. People tend to be really eager to help each other out, but even though they're helping to create these different teams, our own skill sets tend to make us better suited to help some people more than others. Me personally, it's generally the sponsors and KPs who I want to talk to, just because I've already got this tech background and it needs the foundations to be in place before I can make a disproportionate difference. But also, being from the internet, the locals are the people who I'm always eager to speak to. But Andy, I don't know if you have any 506B deals, or if you stick to C's. If you do have a B deal, don't be mentioning that because that's enticing investors. So if you have like a donut on your desk, don't wave it in front of the camera because that's very enticing. But who's out there in the audience that you're eager to speak to?
Personally, I love dealing with the operators and the GPs. That's really because of my consulting and my background. That's really who I want to get kind of in front of. And it's because I have something that I can offer them that really nobody else does. I have a podcast on it where I just talk about ways for them to streamline their operations and make money. I've got a book that's pending publishing as soon as my stupid trademark stuff is taken care of, which I got Good News Friday. So hopefully that's handled in the next few weeks. And I've actually got a registered trademark and I can start pushing a little bit harder on the marketing side and getting the final I's dotted and T's crossed on all the other garbage that goes into publishing a book that I had no idea about until after I wrote it. And then I was like, oh, this is like a brick wall. All right, cool. I love it. But other than that, I love talking shop and I love just the industry in general. There's just a ton of good people, lots of down to earth people, because real estate is great because you don't need the crazy degree and all the credentials and all the insanity. Anybody can get into it. Anybody can do it. Anybody can make money in it. And you can pick whether you want to be passive or active, how involved do you want to be, where do you want to place your capital, how much money do you want to make? Like, there's an unlimited resources as long as you've got the ability to reach out and make connections and learn stuff. And then what's your risk tolerance? And you just build your profile based on how much risk you can handle.
I love that. I love that. And as far as reaching out, me, I got this pretty unique last name, so it makes me easy to find, especially on LinkedIn, which is where I met Andy. But I do want to mention that if you scan this code here, this QR code with your phone, that brings you to the FAQs page of 506B, which is the platform that I offer to investors and syndicators, where I will help you document your substantive relations with your investors so that the SEC has that to look at and make sure that you're not just pitching people all willy-nilly. But Andy, as I said, I know that you're very active on LinkedIn and you got your podcast, so make sure you mention how to see the podcast. But how should people reach out to you?
There's a few different ways they can reach out to me. LinkedIn is always good. Andy McQuade, I should come right up. But if you want to send me an email, you can send me an email to andy@andymcquade.com, QUADE, not AID, because people get that confused all the time, especially here where there's a high school called McQuade spelled the wrong way. In my opinion, it's spelled the wrong way. It was around long before I was, but it's still wrong. Um, the other places you can check out the podcast website at tcomethod.com. So TCO stands for total cost of ownership, and that's where I save people money on their operations, is because it talks about how long are you going to hold this asset for, what's your disposition plan. Let's minimize your cost over that entire period of time you're going to own it, whether you're going to own it for 5 years or whether you're going to hold it for 20 years. There's ways for you to max out your income and your return on investment by making better decisions today instead of just cutting corners and putting the cheapest piece of crap in you can. Let's look at what the long-term operating cost for all of those is and how that ties into your maintenance and your overhead and your utilities and all the other stuff that costs you money every day that erodes what you get to keep.
Mm-hmm. Great stuff. Great stuff. And the last thing I have, it's actually not for you, Andy. It's for you in the audience. It's a public service announcement. And it is, if you've been watching this episode and you've been experiencing searing pains in your eyeballs and like migraine-like symptoms, I'm really confident it's the downright hideous subscribe button that's the culprit. It's doing it. And the way to get rid of it is you just click on it and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And of course, I'm biased. I want people to hit it, because if enough people hit the subscribe button, then YouTube will start paying for these videos instead of me. And I think that sounds amazing. And as far as the trade-off goes for you, it just means that my videos might show up on your list of suggestions, but you can go ahead and ignore those suggestions, because quite frankly, I just appreciate the fact that you spent this time with me. Just like Andy, I appreciate you joining me today. This has been great getting to know you a bit better.
You too, buddy. It's been fun. We definitely need to do this more often.
Definitely. Awesome. Let's do it. Make sure you 506B me. Any syndicators, make sure you 506B me.
Hi.
Oh, hey, yeah, here's my code. You got your QR code scanner? Okay, yeah, oh yeah, just hold it right in the square there. Okay, cool. And now you hit open in browser.
Okay.
Okay. Are you already logged into 506B me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so there's my video. So now I'm already on your watch list. So when you get back to your hotel, you can find out what my core competencies are and my level of sophistication. Sound good?
Yeah.
I love your hat. Real estate's a scam. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
You too.
506B me, everybody.